up, everybody? Welcome to MLS Playoff Central, the pregame show presented by Audi. The conference championships of the Audi 2017 MLS Cup playoffs kick off tonight. 4 teams remain, but only 2 will move on to hoist that beautiful, beautiful trophy. I am Susanna Collins, and it is my absolute pleasure to be joined by this crew right here tonight. Chicago is so well represented tonight, you guys. This is like the Windy City crew. I love it. This makes my heart so happy. We have, of course, this gentleman right here, former MLSer for the Houston Dynamo, the Chicago Fire, current host of The Movement.
This is my little Chicago apartment right there.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Look at that hair. Look at that headband.
Wow.
Kaylin Carr. Oh, how does this make you feel? You getting all the... Getting emotional? All the feels emotional?
This is 125 pounds of pure muscle right there, folks. Look at that.
This is before I knew you.
I feel like you should have worn that headband on the show.
That would have been good. Yeah.
Just like a TBT type of thing.
I respect
Throwback
that.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
All right,
busted back.
all right.
Yeah.
Enough of that. All right, and of course we have this guy, former defender for the LA Galaxy, the Chicago Fire, current analyst for Atlanta United.
Look at this.
Oh, look at this guy.
One of my 2 goals on my career.
Listen, but it was a good one.
I'll tell you what,
At
it was
least
a
it was
good
a
one.
good one.
The other team felt like they didn't have to mark you, huh?
It's called
Duncan.
disguise. You know a thing or two about wiggling your way out of a mark on a set piece.
I
don't
love
you?
this.
do.
I love this. I want my highlights. And of course, last but not least, my favorite ginger midfielder for the Chicago Fire, U.S. men's national team member, and the namesake of my MLS fantasy team. Dax, what she said. This is Dax Cardi. I'm not kidding. Thank you.
But you said your team's not too well.
And that is, I totally own that. That is so on me, Dax. Forgive me.
I'm
going
to
to do better. I'm
pay a
keeping
little
the
bit more
name.
attention next year.
I'm going to keep the name and pay more attention.
And just
next year. And
never have
and
me on your team or be your captain.
You will always be my captain.
I'm steady. I think I get like 2 to 4 points.
You will always
every
be
week.
my captain, Dax. Absolutely. All right, so as we said, you guys, the first leg of the conference championships gets underway tonight. Starting us off, we've got Columbus against Toronto. That game is at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Deportes in the United States, and then in Canada, TSN and TVA Sports. And then that is followed up at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1 and Fox Deportes. That is Houston versus Seattle. And in Canada, that's going to be on TSN and TVA Sports. Guys, there's going to be a little bit of an overlap between these games, so you're going to want to fire up those double screens.
Double pleasure, double
fun.
fun.
You don't want to miss a thing.
No.
You don't want to miss a thing. All right, so let's get into this. Let's talk about how we got here. All right, so we've got, we're going to start in the West. We've got Seattle, who took care of business against their Cascadia rivals, Vancouver Whitecaps, and of course Houston taking care of business against the Timbers. Seattle, you know, what can we say about them? They're the defending champs. They've been one of the most consistent teams all season long. They've been here before. And then we've got Houston. We're playing really, really confident soccer right now. They're kind of riding this wave of momentum. They have been so good at home, 12-1-4 record at BBVA Compass Stadium. Their only loss was a 1-0 result against Colorado back in September. Also, I think it's notable to point out that Seattle has never won an MLS match in Houston. So that's that's kind of a tasty little nugget. So Dax, I'm going to toss this one to you. You guys played Houston on decision day. Not a great result for the Fire. 3-0.
The game's tonight.
3-0.
We don't have to talk about results.
3-0 loss.
We don't have to talk about results in the past.
But you know, based on that experience, what is it about this Houston team that makes them so hard to beat at home?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, Houston, you know, they were very hot and cold this year. Really good at home, poor on the road. And I think a lot of it is just down to confidence. I think that team, whenever they step on the field at BBVA Compass Stadium, they're a very confident team. They're dangerous. They love to play attacking soccer. And part of that reason is just the results that they've been able to string together at home. And they've been able to string together good result after good result. The confidence continues to build. And then almost it's all like you have this unstoppable feeling that you just won't lose at home. Add on to that the fact that the conditions in Houston, weather, field conditions, it's not the best pitch you've ever played on. That all works in their favor. They're not a team that likes to string a ton of passes together. They like to be very direct, go along, use their speed. I'll be very curious to see how Seattle deals with it being more of a possession-based team.
I mean, who would have thought that Houston Dynamo would be playing in the conference championship this year? I mean, nobody would. And now they're hosting the first leg with a chance to potentially go back to MLS Cup. When Houston makes the playoffs, they go to the conference final. That's just, you can just kind of wrap that in. And to me, the difference is Cabrera. This team has been looking for an identity for years, haven't made the playoffs in 3 years. He's come in, given them an attacking style of play where, you know, they have pace on the wings. The Hondurans, Elise and Kyoto have come in. He's gotten the best out of Cubo Torres. Manotas off the bench. It's that attack that stands out at you, but it's actually been their play in the back. Have not given up goals. They haven't given up a goal at home in, I think, 6 or 7 games now. So really everything seems to be clicking for them right now.
You talked about their identity, Kaylin. They're looking to get Kyoto. They're looking to get Elise out on the wings, and that's the way they exploit you. They have speed. They have speed that can burn down the lines. Seattle's a team that doesn't give up goals. They're going to sit in. So how are they going to break them down? They have to break them down through possession, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Eric Alexander will sit in there. Martinez is going to be asked to kind of dictate this game. Are they good enough to do that against a championship team that's not giving up goals? Seattle hasn't given up one in the playoffs yet.
And to add on to that, something that we saw firsthand, or I saw firsthand playing against Houston, and something that they're going to use, I think, heavily tonight, set pieces. And we didn't talk about it too much, in the pregame. But what I will say about them is they use literally everything: long throw-ins, indirect free kicks, direct free kicks, corner kicks, whatever they can throw at you, they're going to try to score a goal off a set piece.
Houston set pieces in the playoffs. That just brings such joy to me,
It's like peas and carrots.
Beautiful, yeah.
All right, moving on. Well, one of the other key storylines heading into these matchups, of course, the FIFA break. You guys, it has been over 2 weeks since the semifinals wrapped up. Some of these guys that we're going to be seeing playing tonight were playing for their national team, specifically the group of Hondurans in Houston. And Dax, I have you right here. They go to Australia, Honduras. They don't get a favorable result. I hate to bring up sad topics here, but knowing what that feels like, missing out on the World Cup, how does that affect a team's psyche, especially with those players that were down there and had to do all that traveling?
Yeah, it's absolutely devastating, and it took me not days or weeks. It took me months to get over, the disappointment that you feel after not qualifying for a World Cup. And for me, the guys in my locker room when I came back to Chicago, I mean, they didn't really know how to act around me. It was all kind of walking on eggshells. I was not a happy camper in that locker room. And so for me, it's a quick turnaround for those guys. How fast can they move on? How fast can they switch their mentality? And as young players, it's going to be interesting to me how they deal with that, because how you deal with disappointment, how you deal with success, I mean, that's all part of growing as a player. So for me, those two guys are some of the keys to Houston being successful and getting by Seattle. I'll be really curious to see if they come out flying with confidence, or if they're, if they have a bad touch or if they have a missed pass, how that kind of affects their psyche.
Not only are they coming fresh off a loss, they're also traveling from literally the other side of the world. Right. That's a serious consideration. That's not an easy bus trip. These guys are young, like you said, but that's a lot to handle. That's a lot to throw on anybody's shoulders, and they don't have months to respond to it. They need to do it tonight.
Exactly.
The crazy thing to me is you don't actually even know if both of them are even going to start.
Yeah, right.
Kyoto has been used not always in the first legs of games. He's come off the bench at times. You don't know if Cubo Torres is going to start, or if they're going to go with Manotas, who had the goal in the second leg that ended up pushing them through. But that's the amazing thing about Cabrera, is this team has identity amidst real change. 34 regular season games, 32 different lineups. What team have you guys ever played on where you've had that type of environment, but also found success? I think it speaks to, really the ability of him to galvanize a locker room and have understanding with his players, no matter who steps up into the field, that they're ready to play.
And, that takes a strong leader, because as a player, if you're healthy, you want to be in the field every game. And, for me, the thing that I look at is that he's getting the best out of not just one or two players, but a lot of different players. A lot of different players in that team can step up and be dangerous and hurt you on any given day. So for me, Cabrera's been fantastic, one of the best coaches in MLS.
Quick question about Seattle, though. This is a team that has dealt with injuries all season long. Does this 2-week break, benefit them? Does that give them any sort of advantage where they were able to rest some guys?
Yeah, I still think we're not going to see Alonso tonight, who is a main cog in that team, has been for a long time. But this is par for the course for Seattle. They can weather this storm. They're a championship team. They've been here. They've done this. They've been in Western Conference championships that they've lost. They've also been there where they won. So they know what is going on. Smetcher's been around this game for what feels like forever. And this team is a team that understands what they're doing. They have a clear identity on the road and at home, and I expect to see exactly the same from them. I don't think the break really affects them as much as it does Houston.
All right, well, a reminder, you can watch this game, Houston versus Seattle, at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. And speaking of that, we've got our own Jillian Sakovits, who is down at BBVA Stadium, and she's standing by with two members of that Fox broadcasting team. Jill.
That's right. I am joined by MLS legends and current Fox commentators Stu Holden and Landon Donovan. Guys, thanks for joining me. Let's dive right into this one. The Seattle Sounders come in here, the reigning champs, the obvious favorites. How much of an advantage, Landon, do you think that they have over this Dynamo team?
I think they have a very big advantage. I think the reason is their experience. So they were there last year, mainly the same players, same core of players. They won't be fazed by this environment. They won't be fazed by a sold-out crowd, and I think that gives them a massive advantage, along with having playmakers all over the field that can make plays.
Stu, do you agree?
I don't necessarily agree the advantage is as big as Landon's saying there, because in Seattle, well, no, I'm not a Houston homer. I have to make that very clear from the beginning. But I do think what Wilmer Cabrera has done and what has been so important with this team and why I think they have a chance in this series is that they're so good at home. He's instilled that belief, and I go back to 06 and 07. I don't like talking too much about the past, but it's very relevant here because those teams were so good at home, and it was a real advantage on a Houston night when you come into BBVA Stadium and you know you're playing against a really good team. So if the Dynamo can play well on the counterattack, if they get an early goal, they could start to give them real confidence in this series.
We'll see. The Sounders would need their first win ever here in Houston. Landon, I want to shift gears a little bit. Clint Dempsey, you know him well, played with him on the men's national team for nearly a decade, just inked his contract extending into next year. What do you think we see from him here tonight?
I think we were all excited to see him stay for another year. A lot of us weren't sure whether he was going to retire, keep playing after what happened with the World Cup qualifying. I think he's pretty motivated. He's here close to his hometown in Nacogdoches. I'm sure a lot of his friends and family are here. And as you know, Stu, when you get to the end of your career, you're not sure whether or not this is your last time. And I think he's going to take that motivation, and I think we'll see a pretty special Clint tonight.
Stu, for you, the last time the Sounders and the Dynamo met in the postseason, it was...
You can talk about this all you want.
Oh, yeah. I brought this up just for you. It was 2009. You remember it well. How's it different this time around for you? What does it feel like to be back?
It feels nice to be back. Nice back home. This was my home. I grew up in Houston, Texas. I also remember the Houston teams that were in the playoffs, and this is a franchise that has been out of the playoffs for a couple years. So to see that buzz of back around town with the Houston Astros winning the World Series, with the Dynamo now in the Western Conference Finals, a sold-out crowd here tonight at BBVA Compass. So there's going to be a real playoff atmosphere. And Landon and I were talking about it, walking in the stadium. Landon said, feels like a big night. It feels like a big night. There's great energy in the city. There's energy at the bars around the stadium. And I think that they want to see their team go out and perform tonight. And so you'll hear that crowd from the game, in the game from the first minute, willing them forward, getting the energy and hoping they can get a result.
All right, Kayleen, I got to ask, who's the bigger Houston homer, you or Stu Holden?
Well, this is actually Stuart's home. Yeah. Dax was giving me a stick about the headband. I almost wore a helmet today.
Bring back the helmet.
Yeah, no, I think Stuart's obviously from Houston. He's doing a charity match we should plug also December 16th to help raise money for the flood.
Are you playing in it?
The Harvey. I think I'm getting the call up for that. Hopefully, yeah, the helmet might make me back on that. Yeah.
Helmet.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate
you
that.
Should definitely win
but
money for that.
I think he's right, though. I don't think, nobody's really given this Houston team a chance, and I think that's whether you date back to Stuart's team in 2006 and 7 or the teams that I played on in 11 and 12. That's the place that Houston likes to be. Mm-hmm. It fits the culture of the fans, the city.
Absolutely.
You've seen it throughout. And going against a sort of big market, sort of sexy club like Seattle with stars like Clint Dempsey, Ladero, all these guys, I guarantee you, they may not talk about it in the locker room, but that's something that's going to be motivating this team.
All right, guys. Well, remember, that game you can watch at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. But now, let's take it out east. Let's take it out east, shall we? We've got the team that I'm referring to as the team of destiny, the Columbus Crew, taking on the Goliath, the team that has had the target on their back the entire season. They're breaking records, Toronto FC. Let's take a look at how they got here. We've got the Columbus Crew, who were able to get through Atlanta. They were able to get through NYCFC. And then we've got Toronto coming off a very, very feisty series against the Red Bulls, which, also highlighted the brawl heard round the world between Josie Altidore and Sasha Kleshkin. Oh my gosh! But more importantly, this left Toronto, without Josie, got a red card for that incident. Also, no Giovinco in this one because of yellow card accumulation. So this is going to be interesting to see how Toronto adjusts to life without their two offensive weapons. And this is a perfect transition to take a look at the lineups for tonight, starting with Columbus. We've got the starting 11 there. Dax, anything stand out to you?
Yeah, well, what stands out to me is just the consistency of the lineup. I think a number of these guys have been playing in this lineup, in this exact same formation for the past 10 to 12 games leading into the playoffs. Columbus has been one of the most consistent teams leading into the playoffs. I think unbeaten in a number of games before that NYCFC game. You have Artur, who's a great signing for them, a guy who's come into the midfield, helped solidify it next to Will Trapp. There are four guys up front with Higuain, Miram, Pedro Santos, and Kamara. Some of the most dangerous players in the league right now. The four of those guys are clicking on all cylinders, and it's making them a very, very dangerous team.
All right, well, let's take a look then at TFC's starting 11 and a different look for them. So, Dan, what's the strategy here for Greg Vanney?
Yeah, as you see, TFC's been so good in the 3-5-2 this year. And now Greg Vanney, at this point in the season, decides to roll out a 4-1-4-1, which my former coach, Bruce Arena, will throw that out the window because he doesn't believe in formations or lineups or any of that stuff. And I think it's interesting to point out, though, at this point in the season, TFC's not playing their best soccer. I think that's obvious, what they've been able to do up to this point. And now to roll out, ask a different role and a different responsibility from a lot of these guys that they're not necessarily used to playing. What it's going to do is it's going to clog up that middle of the field with the three guys in there, will hopefully limit space for Higuain and Miram to operate. But it's also going to open up the wings, I think, for Ricketts to run down and open those alleys and use his pace and use his speed to hopefully get in behind Columbus and exploit them on a counter.
Dax, if you're Columbus, after seeing what Red Bulls did to kind of disrupt the rhythm of Toronto FC, do you maybe look to push Artur to try and step to Bradley and cause some problems similar to the way Adams did?
We talked about this a little earlier, and I feel like Greg Berhalter, he's such a cerebral coach, right? He'll watch different teams and the way they play and how effective those teams were against good teams. And the thing that I found interesting was, the Red Bulls, they completely changed their approach going up to Toronto. And they said that we're going to stick Tyler Adams on Michael Bradley. We're going to make sure that Michael Bradley does not beat us. We're going to make sure that he doesn't dictate the game. And it was very effective. I thought Toronto looked very uncomfortable. I thought that, the Red Bulls actually were a little unlucky not to get out of that series. But at the end of the day, you have to look at what Columbus is going to do. They're going to be at home. They're going to try to be aggressive from the get-go. Could I see if Michael Bradley's having too much run in the game and dictating too much of the pace, could I see them possibly switching Higuain and Artur to maybe disrupt Bradley's rhythm and maybe get Higuain on the ball a little bit deeper? Yeah, I could see that, but I don't think he'll start out the game like that.
All right, so I want to circle back to no Josie, no Giovinco, because Dax, you said something really interesting when we were sort of chatting earlier. You said that TFC can be more dangerous on the road, especially without those guys, and I want you to elaborate on why that is.
Yeah, I said that, and let's just be clear here. They're a much better team with Josie and with Sebastian Giovinco in the lineup. But I have played games against Toronto FC where Giovinco was not in the lineup and where Josie was not in the lineup, and I was the home team playing at Red Bull Arena with the Red Bulls, and it was almost a more difficult game because they had 11 guys behind the ball that all knew their role and that were all well drilled into how to defend as a group. And Giovinco and Josie, they're tremendous attacking players, and they're not really well known for their defensive responsibilities. So that'll make it hard for Columbus. Columbus is going to come up against a team that's very organized, very hard to break down. Now, will Toronto be as dangerous going forward? Absolutely not. I think we all know that. That's obvious. But for Columbus, they're going to be the team that's expected to dictate the pace of the game at home. And when you have 11 guys in Toronto FC that are all well coached, well drilled, and especially in a formation that can be argued that's a little bit more defensive, that's going to make them a very dangerous team.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's clear by their setup, TFC's setup in the 4-1-4-1, they're more defensive-minded, which speaks to taking out, which is obviously not their intention to take out Josie and Giovinco, but now they're without them, those freelancers. There's a more clear, defined responsibility for Ricketts, for the guys that are stepping in, that are going to be tasked with shading the defensive responsibilities and rigid in their setup. Exactly.
Well, no Josie, no Giovinco, of course, but the guy they have off the bench, Tosaint Ricketts, is not your average backup. He's a guy that I think could start for a lot of MLS teams and has done well. He has experience, of course, has played in Europe, came back last season. playoff experience as well. Big goals in the playoffs, helped this team secure their trip to MLS Cup against Montreal. So I think some of what you're talking about, Dax, as far as their position and guarding the 4-1-4-1, might suit him because it's going to be able to be compact, and then that opens up space in behind. I don't think Mensah and Williams can keep up with him.
Pace. It's all about pace when you talk about Ricketts, and I don't want to take away from his finishing ability because I think we've seen some of the goals that he scored throughout the regular season have been fantastic, but he will stretch a back line. He will give you pace. Toronto can be a little bit more direct, and anytime you have a guy like Victor Vasquez in the midfield that can see passes through the lines, if Williams and Mensah, if they're not communicating in one play in one instance, Ricketts will punish them.
All right, well, time now for our Audi Player Index Spotlight. And today we are talking about the home team, the Columbus Crew, and the effectiveness of their production, their overall team production, which sets them apart from every single team left in the playoffs. So I'm going to send Dax and Kalen to the board. Guys, take it away.
All right, Dax, let's take a look at Columbus Crew SC and their main man, Pipa Higuain.
So dangerous when he doesn't have the ball. You see both defensive midfielders from Atlanta command his attention. Opens up a huge gap of space in behind the Atlanta midfield for Pedro Santos to run at the back line.
Yeah, and this is not what they teach you to do defensively.
Always want to stop the ball first.
Absolutely. So we've seen him without the ball drawing attention. This is with the ball. I'll let it roll just a little bit forward. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4 sets of eyes all focusing on Higuain, which leaves space for his teammates.
And it leaves space for Pedro Santos to make a nice, easy run right up the gut, right through the middle. Pedro Santos misses the chance, but Higuain finds the chance left and right.
Yeah, this one doesn't turn into a goal, but as we see in this next clip against NYCFC, this tells you a little bit about their defensive shape, but also a little bit more about maybe their defensive mentality.
And you see here, Ring, instead of going forward, he's going to turn backwards. Artur has good pressure on him right here. Instead of Higuain running all the way back and trying to cover his back, his mentality is always to think one step ahead. How can I be dangerous? How can I attack? He's going to sniff out the good pressure. He's going to sense Ring's going to move forward, backwards with the ball.
And then he jumps the lane, and this is not what you want to see if you're Toronto FC tonight. Options, always picks the right one. Artur with a nice little cut and finish, and the rest is history.
And this shows how dangerous Higuain is on the break, and Columbus has been devastating in transition.
Columbus Crew SC with a big opportunity tonight at home. They've been the best team with the Audi Player Index. You see it there for the playoffs, top of the charts. And also, it's been a team effort. 4 players in the top 10 gives them a chance to potentially host MLS Cup.
All right, thanks, guys. Well, right now, let's check in with David Goss, who is at Mapfre Stadium. And, David, they're expecting a sellout crowd there tonight. So I'm very curious to hear about the crowd there, the atmosphere. What's it like in Columbus?
Hey guys, it's great out here. The crowd's filing in. It's loud. It's a little bit cold, but it should be good. We're really excited for this sellout crowd.
All right, so the Crew, they're facing off against a TFC team with no Josie, no Giovinco. What are they looking to take advantage of here tonight?
Well, last time they played this TFC team with no Josie and no Giovinco, they lost 5-0. So Greg Berhalter is trying to not do that, was his first comment out of his mouth, and he said these guys know that they still have to play hard, and it's still going to be tough. You look at this TFC squad, and for them, it's about trying to move that back line. They feel like if they can get numbers going diagonal across that back line, cutting across the face of Mavinga, they can find some openings. But as Greg Berhalter said, it's all philosophy, it's all theory. You got to go out there on the field and make it and get it done.
Well, a different formation for TFC from Greg Vanney. What sort of result would they be happy walking out of Mapfre with tonight, David?
When you talk to Toronto FC, they just say, let's score a goal. I think if they lose, but they get one in, even if it's 3-1, even possibly 4-1, as we've seen them be able to do in the past, I think they believe in themselves. Victor Vasquez is out there, and you guys talked about Toshawn Ricketts a lot, stretching that back line, but Greg Berhalter's worried about Ricketts on the crosses. He believes he might be better off crosses than Josie, and obviously Giovinco, who doesn't give much there. So this is still a dangerous TFC attack.
All right, great stuff. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy the game.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Coaching 101.
Coaching
Don't
101.
lose 5-0.
Don't lose 5-0. That's a little embarrassing. Goals are good. All right, you guys, it's time for predictions. Are we ready for this? We're going to go around. I want you guys to give me your predictions first for the East and a player to watch, and then we'll do the same thing for the West. Sound good? Sound good? All right. Dan, we're going to start with you.
I'm leading it off?
Yes.
I'm taking Columbus.
Yes.
They've gotten results in Atlanta. They dismantled NYC, who I think is a really good team. And they have the momentum of the city behind them. Those are three big factors for them going up against a TFC team that I don't really think is all that strong right now. So I'm going to take Columbus, and the guy that I want to see perform tonight is Mensah. I think when he is good, he can be very good, and when he is out to lunch, he can be on another planet. And for him to be very integral in what they're doing, he has to be good to allow Columbus's attack to be able to do what they do.
All right.
Hashtag save the crew, baby.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Text is on board.
I'm taking the crew tonight. I'm taking the crew tonight in Columbus 2-1. I think that they were the team in the best form heading into the playoffs. Like Dan said, I don't think Toronto's been playing their best soccer. I do think Toronto gets an away goal, but I think Columbus squeaks it out in the end 2-1 to make for a very interesting game in the return leg in Toronto. The guy that I'm looking out for tonight is Harrison Afful. I think he's one of the best attacking right backs in MLS. I think that he creates at least one chance tonight for Columbus and possibly gets an assist.
All right. Kaylin.
I'm going with the crew.
Oh,
the crew here and the crew.
Yeah. 3 for 3.
But for anybody that thinks it's going to be like the first leg against NYCFC, that's not happening.
Right.
You don't need to, and Columbus doesn't need that to happen. They don't need to win 4-1. They're 2 men down, obviously, with no Josie and Javinko, but they're not a man down in the game as they were with Callens against NYCFC. So I think this is going to be a tighter affair than you expect. 1-1, and then I think a guy we haven't mentioned so far in the pregame, Kakuta Mane. We talked about the pace of Ricketts.
Yeah.
They got a guy on the other side with some speed to burn as well. I see him coming off the bench at some point and maybe making the difference.
I'm picking Columbus 1-0 and a shutout for Zach Steffen.
He's been good.
Who's been so good for them.
fantastic.
He has been.
That's my prediction. All right, so out west, Dan.
Out
go.
west, I am, as much as it pains me to say this, I'm taking Seattle. They're a championship caliber team. And I just don't buy into Houston right now. They've been so hit or miss. I know they're playing at home. I know they're very good at home. I know they can be dangerous, but Seattle's been here before. They've done it. The guy that I'm really interested to see how he does tonight is Tomas Martinez. So if Houston is going to break this team down, it's going to have to be through him. He's going to be very clinical with his passes. He's going to have to pick out Kyoto. He's going to find Elise, and he's going to have to be able to maintain that possession that Houston's going to need as Seattle kind of sits back and absorbs.
Fair enough. Respectfully disagree with you on that one.
Okay.
I think Houston's very strong at home, but I don't think that means that they come out with a win. I see a game that is very tight, testy affair. A lot of choppy play. The field's not great. Not a lot of chances to be had. I see a 1-1 scoreline going into Seattle, and the guy that I'm looking out for is my boy, my former Red Bull teammate, former FC Dallas teammate, Eric Alexander. I thought he was I thought he was the best player on the field against the Portland Timbers. I think that he's a guy that's a little bit different than everybody else in the midfield for Houston. I think that if he's a guy that can get on the ball, calm their play down a little bit. We know that they're good going forward. We know that they have good wingers that want to attack space. But Eric is a guy that wants to be on the ball. He wants to help dictate the rhythm of the game, keep a little bit of possession for a Houston team that's not really their forte. So I'm going to be watching him tonight.
Yeah.
Kaylin, you're up.
I picked against Houston against Portland, and I was wrong. I think this team is a team that has a chance in this playoffs against Seattle more than other people think. I think they actually can go on the road as they proved in Portland, so I don't think they're going to be too aggressive in this one. I'm calling this one a 1-1 draw. The other guy to watch in this one is a guy I know very well, another former teammate, if we're giving shout-outs, Will Bruin. He's going back to Houston, his first game in Houston since he left. He scored 50 goals for this club already, and 11 this season for Seattle. I know he's got a lot to prove. I talked to him last week in Seattle, so I know he's geared up.
Do you think we'll see this one tonight?
The Dancing Bear?
Yeah.
He hasn't done it, actually, so this would be quite the time to bust it out.
Can you text him before the game? Tell him that you want to see it?
Yeah, I don't know.
It might not be the right
focusing
time.
up right now.
You would hope so.
Not the right time.
I hope he busts it out.
That would be amazing.
That'd be awesome.
I'm with this guy. I'm gonna go Seattle in
Yeah,
this one.
come
and
on over.
the last time I made a prediction during the semis, I said Clint Dempsey was gonna score 2 goals against Vancouver, and he did.
Wow.
So I'm gonna stick with that mojo and say that Clint Dempsey is gonna score a goal. It's gonna be 1-0. There we go.
Not bad.
We like it?
Solid
I like
prediction.
It.
I'm on board.
All right, you guys, make sure you tune into these games. We've got Columbus hosting Toronto. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, and then TVA Sports and TSN in Canada, and then that is followed by the 9:30 p.m. Eastern game, Houston against Seattle on FS1, TSN, TVA Sports in Canada. And then join us for our post-game show. We're going to be right back here breaking it all down. You don't want to miss it. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the games, guys.